Are you thinking about freezing your eggs and want to know how to do this in the best possible way? If you know you want to be a mom in the future, but you don't have a partner right now, or you have one, but you're not ready to become a mom just yet, then this video is for you. You're going to learn what you can do before freezing your eggs, and so that you can actually freeze the best possible eggs that you can make. Last week, a 35-year-old single woman joined my Hope Fertility Coaching Program so that I can help her prepare for her upcoming egg freezing process. She does not have a partner right now, but she's thinking ahead and wants to have the option of good quality frozen eggs in case she needs them when she's ready to become a mom. I've been a fertility expert for the last 21 years. And over the last 5 years or so, I have seen many cases like hers. Women priorities have changed. Now we tend to find our perfect match much later in life. Women are career focused and planning ahead by freezing their eggs. All right, so if we're gonna start to talk about egg freezing, then we need to have some overall understanding about the process itself. So the egg freezing process, regardless if you're single or not, and regardless of how you're gonna move forward with your fertility, is the same, okay? And it's very, very similar to a normal standard IVF process. The difference is that once those eggs are retrieved, they're not fertilized with sperm to create embryos and then freezing embryos. We are freezing eggs instead. So the process is shorter, or we're actually separating that process so that you can freeze the eggs now, thaw them in the future whenever that time comes, fertilize them, and then create embryos and move forward with the process. So we are separating that, and we're just moving forward with one piece of that right now. And so this process is very much the same as any IVF cycle would be. You still have to be evaluated at the fertility clinic. You still have to have ultrasounds and blood work done. A proper medication protocol still needs to be created for you. All of this is still the same. Once you start the medication for growing and maturing your follicles and hence your eggs, this is when the real process begins, okay? Everything up until this time is really just preparation and planning, okay, and timing. So you start the stimulation medication depending on your age, your history. That protocol may be a little bit different, and depending on the clinic that you're working with, the protocol will vary a little bit. Then from there, they're stimulating your ovaries to mature those follicles, and then you're going to be monitored somewhat regularly. Typically, that first monitoring time is going to be about 5 days after you start the stimulation. And then you should be monitored about every other day or every day as you get closer to the time of egg retrieval. And what they're trying to make sure of is that all those eggs, all those follicles, are growing somewhat close together in size and maturing together so that they can get as many eggs as possible out of those follicles to freeze for you. Some key details that do need to be discussed is what are appropriate ages for you women that would make sense to freeze your eggs. Well, it really can vary, okay? But typically what we see is somewhere between 25 and 38. That's typically the window that we typically see where women will freeze their eggs. Can it happen if you're younger? Absolutely. Can it happen if you're older? For sure. Not all clinics will do that, but yes, it still can happen. On the younger side, we just have to make sure that it makes sense for you, okay? But at any time in this process, you have to ask yourself a question. One is, do I need to be freezing my eggs? Do I have a partner? Am I getting too old for myself, like in my mind, that I might need to freeze my eggs? Have I ever tried to become pregnant and had issues, and so I'm nervous that I might have some complications in the future? Or do I have a medical condition or reproductive issue that would make sense for me to freeze my eggs? Freezing your eggs is not for everybody. And it doesn't make sense for everybody, even if you're in that window of age, right, between 25 and 38. Just because you're in that window doesn't mean that you should still be freezing your eggs. I view this as an insurance policy, okay? An insurance policy that we hope you never have to use. Does it mean that everybody buys this insurance policy? No, everybody doesn't buy life insurance, right? But for those of you who decide that this is the right choice for you, you have to then start to ask yourself why it's the right choice, at what age is the best time for me to do this, and then we should start to look at some other questions as well so that you are very, very well prepared for what this means moving forward. One big question that gets asked is, if I freeze my eggs, how long can I store them for? You can store them for many, many years. Some say even 50 or more years, right? So storing them, if they are frozen the right way, should not be of a concern. Actually, I think the biggest concern should be the embryology lab that you're using and the freezing and thawing process that they use, because not all clinics use the same process and not all embryologists and embryology labs are the same. And so in this specific process, outside of the medication protocol, that is very well the most important thing that you need to assess. The other reason that I think you should consider freezing your eggs is because it gives you flexibility in the future. It takes the stress off for you. Now, again, this is not for everybody. And I do believe that each circumstance is different. And I've had many women work with me and consult with me who I did not believe that they should be freezing their eggs. And I didn't feel that way because I felt like they needed to give themselves an opportunity to get pregnant naturally, and I thought that the process itself was causing too much stress for them, which was making everything worse. So if you are going to do this and you are looking for that flexibility, we don't want this process to be stressful. We want it to actually take off the stress. And so that's really important. Another thing that often gets asked is, are those eggs legally mine? Those eggs are legally yours, all of them, and nobody else's. So that is also another benefit about doing egg freezing, because it gives you that flexibility of how you're going to manage those eggs. And again, this becomes an insurance policy. But as I said, this is not for everybody. So who is this for? Well, first and foremost, I think anyone who understands or knows that they have a hormonal issue, a reproductive issue, an endocrine issue, you know that potentially there's going to be some concern or difficulty as you age with getting pregnant, then I do think this should be considered. Someone who has undergone cancer or is considering going through treatment for cancer and they want to preserve their fertility, this would be a very, very reasonable thing to do before you begin that treatment if it's possible and acceptable by your doctors. And potentially, again, someone who does not have a partner today, is in the appropriate age range, and they want to assure themselves that in the future they're going to have reproductive flexibility and the ability to get pregnant whether they have a partner or not. I actually just had a member in my Hope coaching program who froze her eggs when she was 35. I did not know her at this time, but she joined the program to make sure that she was ready, because now she's in her 40s. She wanted to make sure that she was ready to use those eggs, have them fertilized with her current husband, who she did not have at the time, who's 44. And they wanted to make sure that they had good outcomes. And they had great outcomes. She was able to thaw all of her eggs and fertilize 80% of those eggs to have good quality embryos to transfer. That is a huge, huge win for her and her partner. And it's all because she was able to freeze a lot of eggs. I think she froze like 20 or more eggs when she was 35. That is what we're talking about in terms of the benefits of egg freezing now for that potential in the future. So I just mentioned her and how many eggs she had, right? I mentioned that she had 20 eggs frozen when she was 35, which begs the question of how many eggs is an appropriate number to freeze to have for the future. And the one thing when we're making this decision that we need to consider is egg freezing and embryo freezing are very different scenarios. The likelihood of freezing embryos and then thawing them and having them healthy to be transferred is very, very high, 99% in most clinics. That can't not and is not true when you are talking about freezing eggs. So you need a lot more eggs to give you that flexibility, insurance, and peace of mind in the future. So that's just as a baseline understanding, okay? Some clinics do it better than others, but in general, you want as many eggs as you can get. Many clinics give you a benchmark of at least 20 eggs to freeze. My feeling is that 12 is a reasonable number to freeze before you say, okay, I have enough. Now, could you keep going and get more? Yes, but I don't want that to be at the expense of you and your health. So if that means you've got to do a lot of cycles to get that number, then we need to reconsider how many you actually need. And that's why I was talking about making sure that you're with the right clinic who has an excellent embryology lab and an excellent embryologist who can really guide you appropriately about what makes sense for you, because it might not be 20, it might not be 12. It might be 8 or 10, depending on your specific circumstances. And I think that is also another key that you need to consider when you are going through this process or about to go through this process, is which clinic, which embryologist, and how many eggs you need to be freezing. I do not want you to make this decision on your own. Making this decision is an important decision and one where many factors need to be considered, as I just mentioned. So my recommendation is you seek out the support from a natural fertility expert to be able to work through your history, look through your medical history, your reproductive history, assess your current health, and understand if now is the right time for you to do that. And one of the main things you need to look at to assess your current health and if you are ready to freeze your eggs is doing testing. Many of you have heard me talk about testing over and over. This is no different, regardless of your age. We need to understand what your overall health is like, and there's no better way to do this without a proper assessment of your hormones and your entire body and health, right? So we need to do testing. At the bare minimum, we need to be looking at your ovarian reserve, AMH, and your egg quality, FSH. Your hormone regulation, are they all in the appropriate place? Estrogen, DHEA, testosterone, progesterone. These are all things that need to be assessed aside from looking at your overall health. If you are going to consider moving forward with egg freezing, we want to prepare you in advance. You don't want to just walk in and say, let me see what I can get. So how can you start to prepare yourself now so that you can be ready when that time comes? One of those ways is to know what your current health is like, what your current reproductive function is like, and your fertility hormones. That is number one. And the number two is to be proactive with your overall health. Make sure that now you are taking the necessary changes in your lifestyle to be healthier than you were before. Now's not the time to be partying like you were in your early 20s, going out to nightclubs, drinking, staying up late, eating whatever you want, being very carefree. Now is the time to be more rigid with your lifestyle, to make sure you're getting plenty of sleep, to make sure that you are exercising regularly, that you are cutting down, if not eliminating, alcohol and drugs that you may have been doing, cigarette smoking. All of those things need to be cut out because they're going to impact your egg quality. And remember, we're trying to freeze the best quality eggs that we can. We also, now is the time to cut back on all the stressful things in your life. We want to reduce the stress, not add to it, because that is also potentially going to impact the quality of your eggs. One other thing that we need to consider adding in is something that you all always ask for, is supplements, vitamins. That's right. What nutrients do we need to be adding in to support our fertility now and improve our egg quality or nourish our egg quality to create better quality eggs? Well, there are some simple basic things that you can be putting in, like vitamin D and CoQ10 and some essential fatty acids. But I'm going to make it real easy for all of you. There's a product that I created with 2 other partners called Rejuva Eggs, and it's specifically formulated to improve your egg quality and nourish your ovarian function. That's right. It has many of the things that I just mentioned and much more in there. So if you want more information on that, then you can just use the link in the description below or just head on over to getrejuva.com. Now, I also want to hear from you. Are you considering freezing your eggs? Why? Why are you considering it? And is it the right choice for you? Have you consulted with a fertility expert that's going to help you figure out if now is the right time to do it? And which points in this video did you find the most useful if you are about to partake in that journey? Comment below and let me know. If you are ready to get a personalized fertility plan and coaching, head on over to marksklar.com/discovery call to speak to a real human on my team so we can identify if having me as your fertility coach is the right next step for you on your fertility journey. Now I want you to watch this video to learn how to improve your egg quality in 3 months. I'm going to leave that link down below as well. And until the next video, stay fertile.